Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to make a paludarium out of some rocks and an open jar. The first thing I did was buy some rocks from Dollar Tree. Now these rocks I used for a different project, but I decided that the leftovers I had I would use for this build. I then used the hot glue gun and I put a layer of hot glue over the flattest side of several rocks that I chose out. These rocks that I chose out were big enough so that they could connect together with hot glue to make an island in the jar. I continued to put rocks down with hot glue until it was a half moon shape of rocks across the center of the jar. You might be thinking that there are some holes and gaps in the rocks. How is this going to be an island? Don't worry, it's not going to be an issue. I then put hot glue on the bottom of some rocks and put them in between the gaps. I wanted to keep them sturdy so the gaps would become smaller as the rocks would cover the gaps. The first couple rocks I hot glued, but the rest I just stuck in there. After placing them in the build, I used some white rocks and gravel that I had from a previous build. These are going to be great because they'll fill in all of the gaps. I used it to fill in part of the island that I was planning to use. This would allow it to cover some of the hot glue and make sure that all the gaps were secure. The next step in this process was making the next tier. For this, I used a piece of cardboard and glued several tall and straight rocks onto it. This would allow me to place a column of dirt later where I could put the plants. Obviously, you might be thinking, the cardboard is going to degrade. It's true, the cardboard will degrade, but right now it is just a temporary holding spot so I could put all of the rocks in the gravel. See, it's really hard to hot glue rocks onto gravel, so I just needed this cardboard to hold it in place. I proceeded to make a divot. After making the divot, I covered it with gravel again. This allowed me to cover the cardboard and make it look natural. I filled in some of the cracks just to make it look more full. It also worked to cover the hot glue that may have been sticking out. The next step is adding dirt. I just used regular potting soil, but you could use topsoil as well. The purpose of this soil is to allow the plants to have somewhere where they could dig their roots in and get nutrients. I then proceeded to fill the dirt to the top of the rocks. In order to hide the glue even more, I hot glued some more rocks in between the rocks where the glue was showing. I did this for the major gaps and it turned out to look pretty good in the end. After a while, I realized that's kind of a steep incline. I wanted to make a beach area, so what I did was got some extra rocks and layered them down. I put these new rocks in the corner so it would leave a side beach area where I could still have a place with a large body of water. I wanted to make sure I had enough room where there would be enough water for something to maybe swim around. Now it was time to add the sand. I chose black sand because number one, I think it looks really good and it would contrast with the white rocks. And two, of course, it was extra from a previous build. proceeded to layer the sand across the bottom of where the water would be residing. I added a little bit on the top right corner so that it would be a little bit shallower. Finally, it was time to add some water. I slowly added it, as not to disturb the substrate too much. I didn't want to mess anything up if I poured a large pitcher of water in at one time. One problem that I noticed with the sand is that it floated up immediately. I had to constantly touch it in order so it would sink. It was time to add the moss. This is the plant I chose because, number 1, it required moisture, and I knew this would be fairly moist. Number 2, the dirt I added I realized was not very thick. It would not support a plant with great deep roots. And number 3, it is wintertime, and moss is pretty much the only thing that grows in the winter, with some exceptions, but the easiest plant to find. I did my best to layer the moss in between the rocks. I also added a stick with moss already growing on it. I really hope that the moss will grow across the stick and make this build look even more aesthetic. This is a good view of what we have going on. I'm thinking about adding some more water in the future, but it'll look good for now. I don't have anything living in it, except for the plants. I really like how the moss contrasts with the black sand. I really hope that the moss will grow up and around the rocks as it seeks to get closer to the water. As you can see in the back there, I added another stick with moss on it. I thought it needed something. Like many builds, you find something that it needs and you add it. So I added this log across the top in order that it would be touching the water and the top, and I thought it completed the build. I hope you guys liked this video. I know I enjoyed making this build. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.